Okay, everybody, looks like we're all here and ready to go. I'd like to begin by call this meeting to order and begin by acknowledging with gratitude, live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Haudenosaunee peoples have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding Nicolet. We get into our meeting today. I'd like to extend our deepest condolences to the families and friends of those affected by the shocking and tragic act at the Lapu Day Festival on Saturday, hosted by the Filipino-Canadian community in Vancouver. Lapu Day honors the memory of an inspirational Indigenous hero who stood against Spanish colonization. And it's the day's powerful reminder of resilience, courage, and the enduring spirit of independence. We are saddened by that this vibrant celebration of culture and heritage was marred by such senseless violence. And our thoughts are with the Filipino-Canadian community at this time. We'd also like to offer our condolences to the family and friends of Sandy Laudrum, Bowen Island Municipality's first hires, the longest serving employee. Sandy gave 22 years of service to the Bowen Island community in the building department before retiring in 2022. She was always kind and patient with everyone who came in and went above and beyond to provide helpful information. She was the go-to person for historical information about any property, and her corporate memory is certainly missed. We're saddened to hear of her passing and hope that her family and friends can find some time and peace in this time of loss. Thank you. So welcome to the Bowen Island Municipality meeting of Monday, April 28th, 2025, and thank you for joining. I'm Andrew Leonard, the Mayor of Bowen Island Municipality and the Chair of this meeting. I'd like to introduce the other elected members of Bowen Island's Council, as I always do, beginning on our far right this time with Councillor Alex Jurgensen. To his left is Councillor and Island's Trustee Sue Ellen Fast. To her left is Councillor and Island's Trustee Judy Getty. To the far left is Councillor John Saunders. To his right is Councillor Tim Wake. To his right is Councillor Alison Morse. And I'd also like to note that we're joined by several members of our professional staff team here today, including our Chief Administrative Officer, Kieran Dillon, our Corporate Officer, Sophie Insignia, as well as other members of our professional staff who may be presenting reports and delivering information to Council here this afternoon. This meeting is being recorded, and when members of the public speak during the question and answer and public comment portion of the meeting, your presence and voice will be included in the permanent recording, which will be available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca and is also live streaming to billions around the world on our YouTube channel. This council meeting is an official forum for the conducting the business of local government. We all love our community. We are all passionate about what happens here. I would encourage everyone to maintain a constructive and respectful tone during the meeting and to direct comments during the question and answer and public comment meeting to myself. For those following along online or in the room, the agenda and full council package, including all of the staff reports contained therein, are available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca. With that, I will look to the corporate officer for the introduction of any late items here this afternoon.
Yes, there were 7 items of correspondence for information received over the weekend that were relevant to this agenda. So those are included in your on-table items package. That includes a letter from Mayor Silas White, a news release regarding Sunshine Coast and Bowen Island ferry reliability. Bruce Russell had a comment on that. Brent Nielsen wrote regarding service notices of BC ferries. Edward Lockman wrote regarding Bowen BC ferries debacle. Kim DeSante wrote regarding the Bowen Island ferry schedule, and residents of Seymour Bay wrote regarding the invasive plant species.
Thank you. With that, I will look for a motion to approve the agenda and the on-table items for this meeting. Moved by Councillor Wake, seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion, changes, amendments? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that carries unanimously. Moving on to public comments. I'll look at the corporate officer for any public comments here today.
Yes, we have 2 this afternoon.
Okay. So we have 2 public comments. Public commenters, you'll be corporate officer will call your name. Whether if you're in person, we'd invite you to come to the chair. If you're online, you'll be invited by our corporate officer to speak. You'll have 3 minutes to make your public comment. You'll hear a buzzer or a timer go off at 2 minutes and 45 seconds about, just as a reminder that that's, your last 15 seconds to make your final conclusions and bring your final points home. That I will look to our corporate officer to invite our first public commenter here today.
So first with us today is Ellen Hayakawa.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Hayakawa. If you want to join us up here at the front. And feel free to take a breath and get settled. I know that coming in front of the council can be anxiety provoking for some. Others are much more confident, but the timer does not begin until you start speaking.
Right. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I wanted to come in person to the new hall to thank you, Mayor Andrew Leonard, and each of the council members as well as municipal staff for supporting the initiative that resulted in the Bowen Island Museum and Archives receiving a grant for a Japanese Canadian heritage site. So removal and incarceration of 22,000 members of the Japanese Canadian community during World War II, and forcing these Canadians to go to Japan or to move east of the Rockies in 1946, and not allowing these Canadians to move back to BC until 1949, including this island, was the second biggest ethnic cleansing and attempted cultural genocide in the history of Canada. And it was caused again by racism and economic greed. So these actions cause pain, hurt, and trauma, not only in the community of Canadians of Japanese ancestry, but also in the European descended Canadians, including children on this island. Imagine being at Bowen Island School with 19 of your schoolmates, and the next day 7 are gone, and there are only 13 of you remaining. You have a picture of this, it's on the staircase of the school. And in many cases, never to be seen on this island again. Nobody knew that their schoolmates were incarcerated in cattle stalls at the PNE, awaiting assignment to incarceration camps. The anniversary of this event is actually this upcoming week. So removal of family happened and others have. Many years ago, I interviewed a 69-year-old European descendant who was Canadian, who lived part-time on this island. And at 9 years old, he was still, so he was here when he was 9, knew of the family that went taken off the island. And at 69, he was still crying because he didn't get a chance to say goodbye. And he didn't know what was happening at the time because everybody was silent. So in my opinion, we're actually just beginning to heal what happened, including on this island 83 years ago. So this project will enable a long-held vision of sharing the pioneering stories of Canadians of Japanese ancestry, who, like everyone else, were living, working, and playing and going to school on this island from the late 1800s to the early 1900s until 1942, as well as their lives afterwards, part of the completion of the story. But it's also a vehicle for intergenerational healing and reconciliation of descendants and ancestors of all, not just the Canadians of Japanese ancestry, but all who have lived here in the past, present, and future. It will help us build, I believe, an even stronger, more resilient, compassionate, caring, kind, and loving community. We owe this to our children. And especially I'm going to refer back to the opening of this meeting where Andrew spoke about what happened in Vancouver. So we need this. We owe this to our children. So a really deep, heartfelt thanks to each of you as political representatives of the people in our community, and to the municipal staff for your wisdom, insights, and support. And thanks to all the people in our community who are working as a team on this project now, and to those who may become involved in the future to bring this project to fruition and to help co-create this island as an even more beautiful, special place to live.
Thank you, Ms. Adcock, for being here today. I know that you put in a lot of work for that project, and it's been really heartwarming to see, so thank you.
So we have Paul Houston.
Mr. Huson, would like to join us up here at the front.
Everybody, thank you for providing this opportunity. My name is Paul Huson, 40-year resident of this island. I'm also a 50-year member of ACTRA and a founding member of UPCP, which are professional cinema and television unions in Canada. I'm here to enthusiastically support the proposal that every summer house could be filmed on this island. I'll just start by saying that it's been a real tough year for us, 4 years for us performers that work in the film industry, and any opportunity is welcome. I know that we've had film production here in the past that have created some problems in terms of transportation and local disruptions. And I've been reading the proposal by every year after. I think it's pretty clear that they're aware of these problems and that they're trying to solve these problems in advance. I do think that's going to bring some significant economic benefit to this island. And as a person who works in front of the camera, I need the work. But there is an issue. They have made a commitment to hire a local. And in the past, we've had productions come and I see, background facilities, tent set up, and I see actors from Vancouver coming over and working here when I'm sitting idle. So I would encourage this, if this goes forward, I would encourage them to stand by their statement that they will hire local. They're talking about 50 background performers potentially per day, which is good. And I have a lot of experience. I have a reasonably good look for the movies. I'm able to do this work, and I would really love to be doing this work. So I would encourage the production to follow through on that. And my final comment would be to, in terms of the amenity that they provide, that they're offering to provide, to consider helping us with the shortfall in this building. We've built an incredible facility here. We built a state-of-the-art theater that will feed this industry, the film industry and theater industry for generations to come. We still have a shortfall of what we've built here. And I think it would be lovely if they would consider naming the tech booth or one of the dressing rooms after their production, and just whatever the amount is that's expected for that kind of a dedication, that they would come up with that. And I would really encourage them to go and take a look at that facility right across the hallway there and say, look, this is going to build support for this. This is going to build generations of people that can work in this industry. And as I say, I'm supporting it. I really hope it goes forward. Thanks so much.
Very much for being here today, Mr. Huson. Okay, so that concludes public comments. Moving on into our agenda. Under delegations 3.1, Brooke Brownstein and Grace Gilroy reviewing the production regarding proposal for filming every year after series on.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you for taking time for us this afternoon. I'm the producer of Every Year After. The original book is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I'm leaving you some copies of this book for you to enjoy. She is a Canadian author based in Ontario, and it was a challenge getting this show here, but we got it to BC, and that was my key. I am a resident homeowner on Bowen Island, also a business owner of the Beaumont. So I have a vested interest in Bowen Island and what happens on Bowen Island. I have shot 6 previous shows here over the years. I'm a well-established producer on Bowen. And recently, probably the most recent television series where it was a lengthy was Harper's Island, and which is your shelter that we have donated that would tore down at the dock. So it's important for us to also give back to the community, means to say. It's eight episodes for Amazon television. It's a romantic comedy. There's no horror, no, nothing. We're fully aware of the ferry problems and, having worked here in the past, we have used water taxis, which we will again use to whatever area of the island that we plan on using, or, booking off-time ferries. BC Ferries is aware of, our, need to be over here on the island as well. We are looking all over the island. The cove, is, it's of course important to us. We're looking at other areas, Artisan Square, and the houses, we're still looking. We have worked very carefully to make sure that we avoid the months of July and August and limit the amount of time that we're here, during that time. And we've also, so our primary heavy shooting, or, most shooting will happen in the months of June and September. We will only shoot here during Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, knowing full well that the weekends, are very important to the islanders and all businesses. And to make sure that the comings and goings on the island are easy to get done. I'll introduce my location manager, Bruce Brownstein, also a very seasoned location manager. So he will be working with us on the island as well. This is a huge economic benefit. I remember when we did Harper's Island, which was again a 10-part series, we were able to fix the Legion. We put a new roof on there, and we built the bar that's currently sitting in there as we speak, and remains as a memento of our shooting at that time. If you have any questions of us, I can take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. I'll look to council for any questions. Not seeing any. Thank you so much for being here today. Oh, Councilor Jorgensen.
Sorry, through the chair. I have been in contact with Bruce just regarding going over some of the locations on the lovely map provided, and we'll just make further that discussion. After the meeting, and some at your convenience. Still trying to understand that map, but and also really appreciate you bringing this opportunity to Rowan. It's a great book, and looking forward to it being released.
Thank you very much, Alex. We'll make sure we follow up with further questions. Anything else?
Councilor Morris.
I know there's been several filmings done on the island and they've all been well received and there hasn't been any issues, and they bring the crew trucks over and on a special period run, on a regular run and all that sort of stuff. So, and there's the stairs that go down to Seymour Bay, and water was another community amenity, and I think the Wicker Man was that.
Yeah, the Wicker Man. I didn't do the Wicker Man, but my production manager on my show did the Wicker Man.
I think they had a good track record.
Right on. Thank you.
Thank you.
For being here today.
Okay, so I'll leave these for your reading pleasure. There'll be autograph ones coming soon.
That's fantastic. Maybe you drop them at the staff
These
table,
on down.
there behind you.
Great. Oh, staff people right behind. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with the delegations having been received, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there councilors who wish to remove items from the consent agenda? We'll be removing 12.1. Councilor Dickinson.
Councilor Reagan, I would like to take the items pertaining to the youth center.
Okay, which numbers are,
Don't realize the numbers at this point since there have been some late items.
okay,
12.2 to 12.5. 12.7 to 12.9. And in addition to that, I would also like to pull the letter on invasive species. As possible.
It's in the agenda. Letter on invasive species.
Yes, I'd like to
It's,
pull that from the consent agenda.
It's not,
It's down under correspondence at 10.1.
Oh, okay, never mind. There on.
Council Gideon.
We received a letter from Delta on April the 17th, and it doesn't seem to have met our
10.2, this one.
Council wishing to remove items from the consent agenda.
And somebody pulled something related to all the ferry department.
I pulled the letter
Yeah,
that's
sure.
Mayor White now sent.
I thought 12.1 was fire department.
12.21.
Ah,
Last call for consent agenda items. Not seeing any more. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please? By Council Getty, seconded by Council Jurgensen. Any further discussion, changes, amendments? Call the question, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that carries unanimously. We'll deal with the consent agenda in numerical order, so we'll do the youth center letters 12.2 to 12.5 and 12.17 to 12.19. Over to you, Councilor Jurgensen, for this petition, and Councilor Wade can jump in as
I'll defer to Councilor Wade first, and then I will add my comments.
Councilor Wade.
So we've received quite a few letters and some very compelling letters from our residents who have direct experience with the importance, necessity, benefits of a youth center. And they're talking about the proposal to have the youth center underneath the health center. There's space available for that, I understand. And we did discuss this briefly in the budget discussions. And when I look back at how much is involved here, we're talking about $25,000 this year in this budget, and I think $10,000 in 2 future years. And that seems pretty modest for the benefit we would get. And the most notable letter for me was from Constable Paul Town, our RCMP investigator in the island. And he has referred to the civil to an application that he helped put in to the civil forfeiture grant program that provides funding to projects targeting, amongst other things, child and youth advocacy centers and crime prevention. He felt that this application has an excellent chance of being successful, and he included a PDF. All the grants in 2023, 2024, all the grant recipients, successful grant recipients. And there's 180 of them on that list around BC. And the grants range from roughly $40,000 to $140,000. So with the help of that, and we put in our bit, I don't think it's going to change. When we made the changes in that final budget discussion, I think we freed up $300,000 or $400,000 to go into reserves, and $25,000 of that seems pretty reasonable. And I think our residents have made a very compelling case as to the advantages and necessity of a youth center. And maybe I'm misunderstanding what the program would be, but I thought it would be a full-time program, or it would certainly be a dedicated space, not a shared space for the program. So I would like to maybe reconsider that piece of the budget and have a discussion.
over to Councillor Jurgensen first. I'll give you the opportunity to speak, followed by Councillor Morse. Okay, followed by Councillor Getty.
Like as many folks in the community know, I've worked with children and youth for the past 15 years and seen the benefits of programming for children and youth. Bowen Youth Center did not come about by accident. It came originally out of tragedy and was built by the youth for the youth of Bowen, and programmed without a space and without a home to operate out of that's dedicated is really difficult to maintain. I know that well, I know that firsthand, and I really think we need to do something to ensure that this youth-led initiative can continue.
Councillor Jurgensen, Councillor Morse, Councillor Getty, Councillor Fast, then Mayor Levin.
Checking my memory question. The civil forfeiture grant, it was submitted by the youth services coordinator, so we as municipalities submitted the grant.
Yes.
It needs to be verbalized in our.
Yes.
Okay, so so it's gone in with a letter of support from council?
It didn't require a resolution of council for support. But what we did do was bring it to council just to make you aware of the opportunity.
And is it a provincial grant or a federal?
Well, it's through the RCMP Foundation. So
Oh, okay, so it's not something where we should be getting our MLA or whatever to contact. I now remember. I thought from the budget process that removing some of the funding didn't remove the opportunity of going ahead with the use.
may I? That's correct, Councilor Morse. So the changes made by council at the last meeting don't preclude the continuation of the operation of the youth center. The funding is still in the budget as it stands to fund the existing youth center. The rent of the two different locations is not that much significantly different, so the budget as it stands should be adequate to fund a youth center if it operates out of the teen center, if it operates out of the new center. What council did was just hold back on approving its use of recreation funds to build the new youth center pending the results of that grant. If it's positive, then you'll need to put that back into the budget and receive the grant and go ahead with that expenditure. I think it's just a means to have another set of eyes on the program itself and review it and finally approve, yes, we want to move into this new center and continue to operate the youth center. But all of the funding for the existing program as it stands in the teen center is still in the budget. So I think that's important to understand.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor Getty, followed by Councillor Fast.
That was my understanding. I think from reading these letters, I don't think that there's any issue with respect to the philosophy or the principles in terms of the teenagers in particular are important and that we want to have a good program. One of the things that we went through in the budget was figuring out how to do the renovations and equipping it so that it wasn't a shared space with toddlers, that it was something that was dedicated to teenagers in particular. We also did a number on the staffing of recreation. So we withheld a 0.5, and I think that we need to let the dust settle in terms of the staffing of the rec department too, in terms of whether or not this is going to be adequately and fully funded. So yes, if we're not opposed to this, and I think a lot of the letters are painting the wrong kind of picture. So, you know, I mean, if we want to defend ourselves, then there's plenty of room in terms of basic experience and things that people have done that to recognize and emphasize that the kids are important, all age ranges, particularly teens. So it's getting the civil forfeiture funding is civil forfeiture in this country is lucrative. And so there's some decent money there and there's lots of people that can get it and we're in line and we've got a good proposal. So we're we have to be patient and wait for that so that we can figure out how much, if we have to spend money on renovations and equipment, how much that would be. And while we're waiting, we can sort out whether or not we've got enough staff, or we need more staff, or we need to adjust that in terms of who can work with. They don't want grannies working with them, as much as, you know, I might say a mean cookie, but whatever. So, you know, we have to let the dust settle. We haven't lost the space in the health center. I think everybody, the letter from the health center is certainly very helpful in terms of their keen on this. So, you know, I think we weren't ready at the budget stage to jump into this, but I think that, and trying to figure out whether or not there's space in this building that could be used, or whether it needed to be dedicated, and you know, what that looked like. So I think we're still moving in the same direction. I don't think anybody should be under the impression that we just don't care about the kids, we don't want to do anything for them, that that's a lost generation or whatever. That's not the case. So it's be patient, we're working through it.
Thank you, Councilor Getty. Councilor Fast.
Thank you. With regard to what my colleague calls the philosophy of the program, I'm really grateful to get these letters because we didn't have any of this indication from the community that I had seen recently. And yet so many things have changed. For example, we've got this new community center, which is all based on the principle of multi-use and shared space. So it's still not clear to me why a teen center needs to be dedicated or exclusive use. Maybe it used to be, but so many things have changed in the world now. Social media is everywhere, and I think it's a big challenge for mental health and social development and learning and all kinds of things for young people. So I'd love what, as you called it, sort out. I want to think about some of these things and hear some information about the needs regarding social media, regarding mobility. Now you can do things from everywhere with your phones and devices, let alone talk to your friends. So the isolation, I'm not sure. Maybe it's worse. Anyway, I've got a bunch of questions. I would be interested in the program. Why, if Teen Center needs a dedicated space, I would like to know why they need one and how that is different from all the other groups who have been asking for dedicated space, and to make sure that we're all clear on the on those kind of factors. Otherwise, I support the idea, as my fellow trustee says, we need to make sure everybody's included. And so that it all sounds good to me. I just have some questions about these kinds of changes and the philosophy of the dedicated and the social media and the mobility and details. Thank you.
Yeah, to our CEO.
I would invite our manager of recreation if she'd come up to front just to speak about the programming aspects and provide some more context around what's being done with the youth center historically and why this would be needed.
Thank you through the chair. It seems that there's quite a bit of research out there, and I'm sorry, I don't have the actual links, and I can bring more of that if we wanted to have a meeting about this, but there seems to be quite a bit of research about this age group and the need for dedicated space that's distinctly theirs in a way that they can use informally. They can come and flop down. Their parent or their grandparents won't be attending a performance in another part of the building, things like that. Particularly, it's the youth at risk that need this, right? It's not the well-adjusted kids. It's not the ones that will come to the facility with their parent and be like, okay, cool, you go there, I go here, right? It's the ones that need that easy access to a space that they know is theirs, right? And when you have a dedicated youth space with dedicated youth workers, they're able to build the relationships with these individuals so that when they really are in need, they have someone to turn to really quickly. So we hosted last Friday night, the Youth All Access Night here. And it was crawling with teenagers. We had only 23 actually showed up, more signed up. This is actually continual problem is actually getting to come to things, but a lot of them came. And it was really fascinating to watch how they were using the space, right? Like they need to be all over the place. And we set up a number of spaces for them using some of the existing equipment that we have, like things that we brought in for play care and different types of things. And the way these kids physically use space is unique. A little destructive, right? So that's part of the reason I began to understand a little bit how challenging it actually was using spaces that are intended to be multi-purpose and accessible broadly and meeting a lot of needs, wasn't really meeting their needs. And I was like, oh, we can't do that again. They're gonna absolutely destroy everything because they don't sit in it, they throw it. They don't sit, so things like that. It's a different way of using it, a different way of like providing something that a 14-year-old boy flings himself and flops onto, because that's the way that they move and that's the way that they interact with space. So some of those physical elements I actually saw in person and thought, oh, this is interesting. One of the other challenges represented by using this amazing new facility, and I'm all about the facility, and I think it's probably a combination of things that's going to provide the right thing for them. Because, sorry, stepping back, on Friday, we played a movie, we had food for them, we had games in the flex room and out on the courtyard. We did a Mentimeter while they're sort of captivated in the theater space to ask them a little bit about what they want, what do they need? And they were able to take some of it seriously, sometimes, other parts not at all. But so something like providing a movie in the theater, and obviously this is a unique space for that. But through the arrangement with the joint use arrangement with the Hearth for how we're managing this facility, priority is given to the arts for the space, particularly the theater, right? And when are those performances likely to take place? Friday and Saturday night. So we cannot guarantee the youth have access to the site every Friday night or every Saturday night, because they will never have that unless unless we change what the arrangement and the understanding is. It'd be very, very challenging to commit to a Friday night, a regular Friday night commitment to the youth at this site. Unless we're saying, okay, yes, you can have it committed in the flex room, and maybe we get curtaining off so that, their grandparent isn't seeing them when they're walking at an intermission or the beginning to the restroom. So it's not creating that unique private space, this facility. Some of the benefit of a dedicated space is, the opportunity and access to working with the Foundry in North Vancouver, for example, and bringing over mental health support. So to meet with the students on Pro-D days or after school or things like that. And just, there's not the privacy here that the kids at risk need. I think a lot of our Bowen youth would be quite happy in the space that's shared with the people they know and love and see regularly on a regular basis. But the youth at risk would not. And that's, I think, part of the nugget of decision making to make around this. Is it a space that we're creating where they all feel safe and it's theirs, and they get to have a lot more input on what is it going to look like? Do we want to build out that kitchen? What kind of furniture do they want? Do they want to give up the space for a pool table? And that's the other piece of it, all the things they love, like a pool table, ping pong table, foosball, all these types of things. We just don't have anywhere to put anything. So we're asking them to come to use a space that doesn't have any of the stuff that gives them that easy way of interacting with one another, right? So kids that aren't familiar, they can come and they can play ping pong together, right? And you have these games and tools that are inherently in the space that make it just easier to interact. And we'd have a pretty big challenge figuring out where to put anything like that in this facility. So these are some of the.
Thank you, that's great. I just want to have a little bit of this discussion while we had these letters in front of us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's helpful. Just some comments from the chair, and then I'll go to second round speakers. I've spent decades working in youth development and family development. I'm incredibly familiar with the mental health landscape. Sitting on the North and West Vancouver CMHA board as the chair of the BC Mental Health Foundation. So those at-risk components are absolutely essential. But, you know, I think the challenges that I have currently with the deployment of a new facility and the way that we handled it at the council, from my understanding, is that we didn't say no. It's still in the budget. The money's still there. We still have existing funds that are relevant. But I think it's important to understand a couple of things for myself. The first is that there's a difference between the facility and the program. So simply having 4 walls and a roof doesn't necessarily a good program make. And I think given that we just moved into this community center a couple of weeks ago, we still don't know what it's going to take to operate for a year. We're still unsure of what the spaces are. The conversation about rushing ahead and renovating a new space, a new satellite facility, and a brand new program seems premature. Like, I think there's more time that needs to be thought about that, especially for a youth center when we talk about a dedicated space where effectively from Monday to Friday, 10 months a year, a dedicated teen space is going to be vacant during the day. It's not a full-time space that can be used. So it's dedicated for one part of the population. And I think that makes it a bit challenging as a satellite facility that we're just looking to start. The other component of it, when I talk about this, that separation between the facility itself and the programming, is what I'd like to see if this comes to be approved in front of council is a compelling programming plan. What I don't think council has seen are statistics on the uptake of the existing youth program. How many regular youth are we getting at that program? How many of those youth are at risk? What sorts of programs are we doing if we're going to talk about catering to at-risk youth, which frankly isn't the responsibility of a municipality. That's where, if we're talking about community mental health, that's where we need, some partners from Vancouver Coastal Health, for example, or some contribution from the province, because it's not our role as a municipality to be delivering mental health programs. Pro-social programs and mental health positive outcomes aren't necessarily tied to a facility as well. I can look at programs like Outward Bound, for example, that has no walls and a roof, and they just use what's outside to drive incredibly pro-social, incredibly positive mental health outcomes. So in order for me to be convinced from this chair, I need to see a compelling program plan that's going to draw as many youth as possible, whether it's at-risk youth or otherwise, into a facility like this on a regular basis to make that value proposition of constructing a new facility and then throwing operational resources at it, which we don't have the budget for yet, to make that, a decision that adds up for me, at least. So my encouragement would be, if we do get the successful grant, renovating this new facility and paying rent for it is one part of it, but then what's it going to cost? Is it one youth worker? Is it multiple youth workers? What's the cost of the program's going to be out there? And how is that better than, taking youth to field trips on the mainland or running events here? Like, I need to see that comparison of like, what does an excellent program look like at a dedicated facility versus outside of a dedicated facility? And what's it going to cost operationally? Because even with this community center, we still don't know what it's going to cost for the full year, and that hasn't settled yet. So those are my concerns from the chair. I'll move on to second time speakers, Councillor Jorgensen.
Thank you, Mayor.
Well, I appreciate the need for some more information on the program plan. I have to say that I really can empathize with a lot of at-risk youth. It's been a large segment of the population I've worked with over my career. And creating a space where those youth feel comfortable is important. I feel fair amount of importance, and we need to, in addition, while we figure out all these pieces, need to have a plan for what's gonna happen between now and then, because if this is gonna take some time to figure out and figure out the operation of the community center, figure out all these pieces, we still need a plan that takes these at-risk youth into account in the meantime, and that takes into account our Bow youth as a whole. And I just think that's something that I think we should be looking at sooner rather than later. And without,
I'm curious, how many at-risk youth do we have on the island? Where do we get that data from?
I haven't actually asked the same thing recently.
Yeah.
I don't have that answer for you right now, but I'm also interested in knowing that.
Councillor Saunders, followed by Councillor Wade.
Thank you, to the chair. I'm certainly sympathetic to the argument that having their own space is for any youth, whether at risk or otherwise, probably certainly provides them more value. Hard as it may be to believe, I remember being 15, it was just a long time ago. But having said that, I want actually, I mean, I've worked with at-risk youth myself over the years, a fair bit, probably as much as anybody, given the other careers I've had. And I recognize the need for this and the need for some kind of not just assistance, but I wanted to thank Councillor Getty in particular for the summation of what we've actually discussed already, is that we are working towards this. We're trying to get the right answer right away, and then Mayor Leonard just, you know, like mostly what I'm saying here is what they said, you know. So just to shorten my little speech is, you know, we need to know what we're talking about before we start committing money to it. We haven't thrown the money away and said we're going to go spend it on a new candy store or something. We said the money's there, but let's wait, let's figure out, and to Councillor Jurgensen's point, let's figure it out quickly. Like, let's not be 2 years from now still having this discussion. I think there's certainly a time constraint to us that we should be aware of and pay attention to. But I just, you know, we've got a new building, we've got some money set aside in the budget, it hasn't been spent. We've got potentially a grant coming. Really like to know the outcome of that before any final decisions are made. And I think you know, I think it's necessary for us, you know, proper fiscal management and proper program management. I think we need to get the data in place as quickly as we can and then make decisions on it rather than move ahead, because we did receive some letters, which are great. It's nice to know how the community feels about something, or at least those that are writing letters. But I mean, everybody wants kids to do better and have more opportunities. None of us are against that. And I think we just need to make sure that we have as much information as possible before making any decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll do last comment, Councillor Wade.
Okay, I'll try to be brief because we've had a lot more information than I had, and I really appreciate the comments from Greg and Councillor Getty, Councillor Saunders, and Mayor Leonard. I have a much better understanding of what it is we're dealing with here, and I think the issue for me is we've sent a signal, clearly, we've sent a signal to the community that we're not as supportive as we seem to be of the whole concept of this. And I'd like to see a little more of a can-do attitude to say, okay, we haven't got this all worked out yet, but we are committed at some point, and hopefully soon, to making this happen. And we'll have to, you know, we'll have to find the funding. And there are, I presume there might, you know, in terms of mental health, if it's Vancouver Coastal Health, I mean, we could find out what other communities do in terms of paying for this. But I would like to do something in response to these letters that sends a signal, what I've heard today, that we are actually committing to working on this, and we agree on what the value is. and the importance of a dedicated space. That in Neil Boyd's letter, he says, this has the important limitation of not having any space that has been purpose-built for youth, and inevitably not having the appeal to youth that a dedicated private space would provide. I should add that this position is contrary to the initial position held by council, which led John Stiver to proceed with plans for the health center. In his attempt to secure a grant from the CMP. So I'd just like to reframe what our commitment is.
Okay, no, you said last, but can we move this somehow or other into our strategic planning or somehow bring it up so that we've got a request to staff to provide a report with respect to potential programming ideas, numbers of people at risk and somehow I would get a little bit more proactive about it, so. I mean, just listening to the credentials around the table, we've got, really good ideas that we can generate. If we want to get into comparisons, I've got a master's degree in community correction. I was a psychiatric nurse with a male admission warrant, I mean, there's plenty of talent, both in terms of all the people that wrote the letters, and the people around the council table, the people that are in the staffing, and other people that are very, very interested in the kids growing up, and it does take an island to raise a kid, so we can do something probably with or without bricks and mortar. That would be fantastic.
So Councillor Jurgensen, unless it's a motion, I'm not going to go to third time speakers. Just because we've spent a lot of time on this, so just to recap where the process is, there's a grant application and there is money budgeted. The anticipation is there's going to be an outcome to the grant. I would anticipate then staff come back and have a conversation about what the facility, what the program looks like, and have a more detailed and formal staff report on what that looks like, including an operational budget. That would be some months out. So currently we're in a consent agenda item that's just been pulled for letters. Pulled by Councillor Jurgensen and Councillor Wake. So is there a disposition on this from two councillors here? Councillor Jurgensen.
I want to move to accept the letters as accepted. Really appreciate all the comments from everybody around the table and really heartened by it.
So move to receive by Councillor Jurgensen, seconded by Councillor Wake. That I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That carries unanimously. Okay, great discussion. I look forward to what this program looks like when it's fleshed out. And 12.21, so 12.1 from the chair, and it's Mayor Andrew Leonard and Mayor Silas White regarding degradation of ferry performance. So folks will see this letter attached to the agenda, but just to speak to it, on Friday, Mayor White and Gibson's and myself sent the letter to the Premier following up on some ferry challenges that we saw on Easter weekend. I'm sure that anyone that tried to travel on a long weekend experienced chaos that even surprised me, given the amount of chaos we've seen from ferries in the last couple of years. I know that on Bowen Island, there was a mix up with lineups and folks got stranded on the mainland overnight and spending hours in the ferry line, very confusing traffic management. Our colleagues in Gibson's, they were fielding issues from the community when the boat broke and it needed to be tugged in, and misrepresentations of how much deck space was left. And it's just been really, really challenging. In the conversations that I've had with Mayor White, we were initially somewhat positively optimistic about this new engagement regime that BC Ferries was putting forward. However, that seems to have dried up, and I think a recent letter that this council sent to BC Ferries reflects that. We saw the schedule change that affected folks like our schools on the island, folks that are commuting back from the mainland. We saw no engagement on that. So we've seen, I think some of us around the table have attended a half dozen engagement opportunities with BC Ferries over the last year, but when it came to an actual operational change that was being made, there was no engagement at all, and that feels incredibly challenging. In addition, highlighted in our letter, both Mayor White and myself and any other elected official I talked to about BC Ferries has had a real difficulty with the governance structure of BC Ferries. At UBCM, our council brought this up with the Minister of Transportation, saying that the ministry is claiming that BC Ferries is a private entity, the BC Ferry Authority and the Ferries Commissioner says that they don't have operational control, and the BC Ferries Board and senior management says that they don't have the money to do anything. So we end up with this constant meme of Spider-Man pointing at each other saying that we don't have the ability to fix this. As a result, there's this circular unaccountability from all of the governance structures that deal with BC Ferries that, given what felt like a disastrous first long weekend of the season, feels very ominous for what's to come. As we go into May long weekend, as we go into summer, as our residents try to get to jobs, medical appointments, and bring their kids to the mainland, and visitors are just utterly chaotic about trying to get here and clogs this up. This also comes on the heels of a request that has been unanswered to date from this council, requesting $150,000 of annual funding to deal with ferry marshalling and infrastructure upgrades in the Cove. And this council said, hey, BC Ferries, if you don't want to take responsibility for your marshalling and your responsibilities here in investing in Snug Cove, fine, we'll do it, but we can't do it on the back of property taxes in a community of 4,200. You need to help us. To date, we haven't gotten that response. So we'll wait to see if anything comes out of that. This new letter goes directly to the Premier as past government. We didn't see a lot of traction from Minister Fleming, so hopefully Premier Eby will take up our call to at least meet. And the requests that we have are relatively simple. So Mayor White and I made requests to establish an accountable governance table. So comprised of elected officials, comprised of First Nations representatives that can actually hold BC Ferries accountable and make some operational and governance changes. We talked about mandatory and transparent reporting. It's very difficult to get information from BC Ferries about time of day travel, capacity, loading, etc. And that's something that we felt was absolutely key. We demanded immediate service upgrades or improvements on routes 3 and routes 8, which is the Langdale Ferry and the Bowen Island Ferry, because we haven't seen it. We cannot go through another season like this with boats that are decades old and breaking down and destroying and running into our docks in Snug Cove here. It's just utterly unacceptable. Something needs to change. And the last is meaningful community engagement. So this regime of engaging with communities and doing apology tours and talking about, hey, what is it you folks want to see when the issues are really quite simple? We want to see reliable service. We want basic access and reliable access for our residents accessing the mainland. We'd like investment in the Snug Cove side. And that's basically about it. I'm not sure, and I'm sure that our community isn't sure, how many more times we can say this to BC Ferries without seeing operational changes. And when operational changes are made and they aren't engaged on, that doesn't, to me, seem like meaningful community engagement. It seems like we're just taking in opinions and we're engaging for the sake of engaging, but it's not leading to any significant, proactive, constructive change that affects the lives of ferry-affected communities for the better. So that's the substance of our letter. I just wanted to speak to it. I really wanted to thank the community as well for all of the letters that they're sending. My encouragement to the community when you're having issues with BC Ferries is send those letters as wide and as far as possible to the political entities, the governance entities like the Ferry Authority, like the Commissioner, to the Board of Directors, to senior management, because it is clear that this silo of community engagement that BC Ferries wants to put us through isn't working, and we need to raise the alarm to as many people as we can and as wide as we can to get some action and get some traction on what is a critical and core service for access to our island. And that's that. fired up, I'm annoyed, and I'm going through another summer like we've had is just unacceptable. And the municipality is bearing the brunt of it when it is not our job. It is BC Ferries and the provincial government that needs to take responsibility and take accountability for the service that they're bringing to this island. Councillor Saunders.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you to both you and to Mayor Gibson's for the letter. I just wanted to highlight for anybody listening or watching, you know, the billions worldwide, that one of the most important things in that letter that you didn't mention there was putting a timeline on them. Like if there was we want a response, we want it by May 31st. Let us know what's happening. So at least it's not gonna be, yeah, we're getting to that. I mean, it may well end up being, yeah, we're getting to that, but at least we put a clear date, said, hey, answer the letter. Let's move. Thank you.
Welcome. And just on that, I think the next thing that this council is going to need to turn its mind towards is if the responses from our letters, the council letters to BC Ferries come back, either no response or not enough. And this other letter that Mayor Whiten with the time request that we sent the province comes back with no response or an inadequate response, we're going to have to turn our mind to, okay, well, what do we do? Because I don't think that we can just do nothing. There's going to need to be some sort of action, some sort of working within the municipal policies and tools that we have available to us that puts pressure on the provincial government as well as the BC Ferries Corporation in a way that also doesn't harm our residents or harm the interests of our residents going back and forth. I don't know what that looks like. I stay awake late at night, losing sleep, trying to figure that out. But I think it's coming and I think it needs to happen. It's disobedience. This is the former president, kind of passed away.
Thank you, Mayor, through the chair, thank you. That really encompassed everything in the letter and everything behind the letter. And if there's some way you can take that little clip from YouTube and send out to everybody, then that's gonna be a good sort of precursor to where we're headed with this. Thank you.
Councillor. I think Councillor Fastwell makes.
It makes me wonder whether, thank you for writing that letter and getting together with Silas White. I think that we might want to consider the Facebook campaign that we held back in, some of us municipal types were involved in back in, I think it must have been 2014, when we had the little whiteboards and some of us carried them around on the ferries, letting people write their own message to BC Ferries. We take a photo, post it to Facebook. It was called In Their Own Voice or In Their Own Words, something like that. Anyway, I'll send you some examples. It was very simple. We did it off the edges of our desks with a couple of washable markers and boards, and it may have been very effective. But I can't enumerate that, but I'll send you some. It's an idea that helped everybody get together at the time.
Councillor Paxton. Councillor Morris, Councillor Getty, Councillor Jorgensen.
Well, coincidentally, with your letter going in on Friday, BC Ferries sent out a Let's Connect introducing our new engagement framework. But they don't give a lot of detail. And it's purpose-driven engagement, project-specific feedback, blended participation, stronger collaboration with government partners, but more frequent and transparent communication, and inclusive and accessible engagement. Those are wonderful motherhood words, but what is it actually going to be? If you're just meeting with public relations people, it's not going to go anywhere because they don't know anything about how the thing operates.
And Mayor White and I saw that release right before we sent our letter. And we sat side by side at the House on forum and read over it and asked each other, does this change the letter that we're sending at all? And absolutely not. For exactly the reasons specified. Councillor Morris. Councillor Getty, followed by Councillor Burns.
There was a time, I think 2 or 3 meetings ago when our MP showed up to brief us on activities, and we talked to him about transportation, and we talked to him about convening this what you've mentioned today is the accountability governance team. And he nodded and thought that that was of some, it appeared to think that that was of some interest. And, you know, if we don't get that kind of a response from government, I think that that's probably one of the better ideas that we could convene it ourselves in terms of having representatives from lots of coastal communities, including the what is it, the Rural Executive Group and the Islands Trust and maybe AVIC and some of these other groups, as well as we invite the provincial ministers and you know, have us work on what the problems are with the different silos that they create and what the problems are in terms of performance and what all of the details. And that's a stronger message than 2 mayors. And you know, it might, if we put some time and energy into it, I think that would be something that would both be helpful in terms of content, but also force their hand a little bit more. And I think that if we wanted to up the ante, that's an effort that we could take on ourselves and not ask them either.
Yeah. Absolutely. Councilor Jurgensen.
First of all, I thank you, Mayor White, for sending that letter. Also, I likewise have stayed up many late nights going, how do we fix this? And just if there's anything needing to report, I'll be there to help.
Thank you, Councilor Jurgensen. And with that, I will move to receive 12.21, seconded by Councilor Getty. Favorite. Aye. Aye. That carries unanimously. Moving out of the consent agenda on to section 7 bylaws 17.1, 1360 Mount Gardner Road rezoning, bylaws 674 and 675, 2025. We have Drew back in our Island Community Planner joining us here today.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you, ladies. Building for the first time. So this report is to provide details around the rezoning and OCP amendments application for 1360 Mount Gardner Road and to present the amending bylaws for first reading. So this application was previously discussed with council at the March 10, 2025 meeting, where council directed staff to draft amendment bylaws and return for first reading. Staff were also requested to consider the rationale and amount of a financial contribution in lieu of amenity contributions, and also to consider tree protection options over the property. To explain the current zoning amendments proposed through bylaw 674, this would change the current RR3 zoning to SR1C zoning, and that would reduce the minimum lot size for individual lots without a community water system from 1 hectare to 0.4 hectares. Now would enable the subdivision of the property into 2 lots. There will also be a small change to the allowances around agriculture, as the current zone allows agriculture as primary use and the proposed zone allows domestic agriculture as accessory use. So the difference between those terms is that domestic agriculture only allows agricultural production for the use of the occupant, not third-party sales. And the OCP amendment through bylaw 675 will have the current rural residential designation with a minimum lot size of 1 hectare will be amended to an RSE1 designation, and that will allow lots as small as half hectare or 1.24 acres. So in discussing amenities, staff have reviewed contributions from past rezonings in the area and have attempted to calculate a comparable figure for the subject property. So most notably, the rezoning of the lots south of Bolton Road by John Reed in the 2000s offered mainly 2 aspects of amenities. So a financial contribution totaling $50,000 went towards trails in the area, and the dedication of roughly 7 acres of land to the Islands Trust Conservancy. So considering that application involved the rezoning of around 33.5 acres of land, the contributions per acre come out to about $1,500 an acre for the financial contributions plus 22% of land dedication. And then just noting another example of contributions tied to rezonings in the area would be $50,000 that was offered with rezoning application for 815 Smith Road, and that was to allow a detached secondary suite. So going by the Bolton Road rezoning examples and image on the map there is that, so it's always SR1C property, so essentially that square there minus the one lot jutting through the top. So going by the Bolton Road rezonings, amenity contributions, and then adjusting for scale, when applied to the 1360 Mount Gardner Road property, it comes out to a financial, so the financial contribution side of it comes out to about $4,500. It's based on the 3.05 acres times $1,500 per acre. And the other side of it, as for the 22% land contribution applied to the 1360 Mount Gardner property, that comes out to 0.67 acres of land. And the applicants are not able to provide this contribution in physical land as we previously discussed. So a monetary equivalent must be established. So BIM doesn't have an existing policy as to calculating payment in lieu, nor for calculating the per acre value of land. So going by, taking bare land value, taking out a loan, that of course would be in hundreds of thousands of dollars. That would be, that would just be instantly unfeasible for the applicant, considering their intent to use the funds to continue moving the property. The issue then is establishing a fractional value, going by a rough figure of $1 million per acre for bare land value, applying that to the 0.67 acres, and then reducing that to 3% of that figure. That comes to a figure around $20,000 for the equivalent to the contribution of land. So combined with that aforementioned 4,500, the straight financial contribution, that comes to a proposed amenity contribution just short of $25,000. In calculating that figure, staff will note we have no rationale as to why that should be 3% as opposed to 1%, 2%, 4%. The intent was simply to set a figure for discussion that seems agreeable to council and the community and financially feasible to the applicant. Staff are open to other calculations put forward by council. One possible and important alternative, based on past discussions from council, would be a conservation covenant over the remaining forested parts of the property, which would maintain screening between properties and preserve some of the natural habitats. Even if 50% of the property can't be preserved as per conservation development policy, there is still merit in preserving some of the property as opposed to none. Staff believe at least a third of the property, and this is based on myself speaking with Carlos Skuse, we believe about a third of the property have ecological value worth preserving, so over an acre. So considering the difficulty in assigning a value to that aforementioned 0.67 acres of land, so that's referring to that equivalent to the 22% land contribution. It could be reasoned that the protection of a portion of the land through a conservation covenant could be seen as equivalent to that 22% land dedication. So arguably this could then negate the need for the $20,000 payment in lieu of land contribution, or at least count against that amount if council agrees with that rationale. Process-wise, following this hearing, the bylaws and Islands Trust policy checklist will be referred to the Islands Trust. Once they respond, staff will return to council for second reading of the bylaw with the public hearing stage to follow after that. So staff's recommendation is that council gives first readings to bylaws 674 and 675, 2025, and that the bylaws and Islands Trust policy checklist are referred to the Islands Trust.
Okay, questions for the planner? Councilor Fast.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question relates to the question of agriculture. I don't see it as a small matter because it looks to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this removes that lot from agriculture that could be used like a hillside farm to sell plant products or animal products that were raised on the land to others. And my question is, does that mean that any future landholder of either of these two lots would not be eligible to get the 50% farm tax status that Bowen Island provides?
Councilor Fast.
It's a late question. I'm sorry, I didn't think of it early enough to send it to you.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know enough about that tax exemption to know where it would apply. I'm not sure if that would cease.
Okay.
The 50% property tax applies to land that is classified as farmland. There are certain criteria that need to be met from BC Assessment, and it's BC Assessment who does the classification of the land as farm.
Right, okay. Thank you. So that's not a yes or a no, we don't know. Okay, and I see that in this presentation, here's the second question, that you're using earlier rezonings as precedents for this one, this proposal. And I'm wondering well, never mind. I can see that this would be a precedent for any future ones as well. So thank you. I withdraw that question.
Councillor Fast. Further questions for the planner? Is council willing to move the recommendation? Councillor Morrison.
I would move that bylaw number 674 cited as Stone Isle Municipality Land Use Bylaw number 57, 2002. Amendment bylaw number 674, 2025 be read a first time. And that bylaw number 675 cited as Stone Isle Municipality Official Community Plan bylaw number 282, 2010. Amendment bylaw number 675, 2025 be read a first time. And the council refer bylaw number 674, 2025, bylaw number 675, 2025, and the attached Islands Trust fund statement checklist to the Islands Trust. And the council advises staff to return with the results of that report. No, those.
Moved by Councillor Morris, seconded by Councillor Saunders. Councillor Fast to the motion.
Can I ask that the motion be severed?
Yep.
In the middle, so that the first two are in one vote
Okay.
or more, if people would like, but I would like them to be separate.
Okay, so we'll sever the motions in half then, so the first two and second two. So any discussion on the first two clauses of the motion, that bylaw number 674 be read the first time, that bylaw 675 be read the first time. Over to you, Mr. Fast.
Thank you. I'm as much as I appreciate all the wonderful things that the family has and is contributing to Bowen Island, this is not for me about people. I think it's about the property and it's about the island of our official community plan. And I'm concerned that this removing of the lot from agriculture and setting a new precedent goes against the idea of protecting the rural character of the island. It would limit whatever agriculture could be carried out there in the future. And obviously it goes against the nature gets half so far as the negotiations have gone so far. I don't think this is a matter of, it's not that council is voting to punish the property owners or make them move off the island or anything like that. I think properties can change hands unexpectedly. Anyway, I think this is against the principle of preserve and protect and rural character and farming on Bowen Island. So I can't be in favor of recommendations, the first two recommendations on the sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Councillor Saunders.
Through the chair, having visited the property, considered it as, I recognize that it is presently listed as farmland, but doesn't look like much like farmland, to be quite honest, not in the sense of the way we think of farms in any event. Aside from that, though, one of our strategic initiatives is more housing, like we need more, and subdividing this and adding another property, another house here. It's a small piece, but it's a piece. I think that's one of the things we should be looking at as well. I don't see that particular property is damaging the potential for farming on Bowen in any way. And as a result, I'm in favor. I'm supporting these bylaws.
Councillor Saunders. Not seeing Councillor Getty.
Well, I think one of the principles is, at the same time, in terms of saving as much land as possible for the ecological and corridors and amenities, and saving as much as possible for agriculture and self-sufficiency in terms of food. We also have these trade-offs and payments in lieu and other amenities. And I think that it's our job to decide how to balance all of those conflicting interests. And I'm not sure yet whether or not the food security and ecological corridors trumps the needs of members of the community, whether it's this family or any other, in terms of figuring out how to live on pieces of land. And I don't know enough in terms of the farming potential. And, you know, it's like, I like to think that I can make anything grow anywhere, but that's ridiculous, so. It's, at this point, I would very much like to see a response from, the Islands Trust and to get, a sort of an independent third-party spin in terms of some of the ecological, benefits that, and I think they've been helpful in the past, the executive, in coming up with an analysis of some of our problem things. I have some concerns with respect to the staff answer to that. Part of the checklist, I think it was the one about economic. Can't find it now in front of me, but the economic effects, and I think that it's very specific, the answer is very specific to this family and these particular circumstances. I think the question is the broader interests of the community and whether or not this will have a positive or negative effect on the economy, and that's weighing the agricultural with the housing, I think, in terms of what the priorities would be for this particular piece of land. So I would support going to first reading. I would support referring it to the trust, and I look forward to hearing what their response to this would be.
Thank you, Councilor Getty. Not seeing anyone else in the speakers queue, I will call the question. All in favor of the first two clauses of the original motion, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, raise your hand, say nay.
Nay.
And that carries with Councillor Fast in opposition. We have the remaining two clauses. The council refer bylaw number 674 to the Islands Trust, and the council directs staff to return with the results of those referrals. Any comment on this? Any more discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Backen. Although, it looks like you're staying here for round two of rezoning party. 2095 Cape Drive rezoning bylaws number 666 and 667. 24. Back over to the Flannery.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this report is to present the bylaws for third reading to amend the land use bylaw and official community plan for 2095 Cape Drive to allow the continued operations of the IDLC school. This application was introduced to council on June 24th, 2024, that received first and second readings on September 23rd and December 9th, respectively. This public hearing was held on March 24th, 2025. Several letters were submitted ahead of the meeting, and several property owners spoke in support of the application. At public hearing, no clear opposition nor significant points of concern were raised at the meeting, and it appears the application has the support of the community. Staff recommends that council gives third reading to amendment bylaws 666 and 667, 2024, and for bylaw 667 to be referred to the Islands Trust for approval.
Any questions from the planner? We'll get the recommendation onto the floor. Not seeing any. Councilor Fast.
Sorry, I was preoccupied with the other one. Can you remind me, did this application go to the Islands Trust already as well?
Yeah, the initial referral. Yeah.
Thank you.
Don't have to again sooner.
Thank you.
Councilor Getty.
Recommendation.
Yes, please.
Recommend that bylaw number 666, 2024, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Land Use Bylaw 57, 2002, amendment bylaw number 666, 2024, be read a third time. And that bylaw number 667, 2024, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Official Community Plan bylaw number 282, 2010, amendment bylaw number 667, 2024, be read a third time. The council refer bylaw number 667, 2024 to the Islands Trust for approval.
Moved by Councilor Getty, seconded by Councilor Fast. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that carries unanimously. And thank you, Mr. Backen. Moving on to 7.3, bylaw number 677, 2025, which is the 5-year financial plan between 5.9 and 6.8. I was at the annual tax rates. We have Munson, our CFO, joining us here today.
Thank you. Next to the rest of council. Before you is the draft 5-year financial plan and annual tax rates bylaw. That has been through extensive public consultation. Several iterations have been presented to council on first on January 20th, again on March 10th, again on March 24th. The bylaws were first seen presented to council at the previous council meeting, and they're before you today for fourth final reading and adoption. This is final step in getting our 5-year financial plan approved, which will enable us to move forward with the taxation process this year.
Thank you. Any questions for the CFO? Councilor Fast.
I just have one. And it relates to the distributing the tax between residential and business and nonprofit properties. I know we've discussed that already, and then I've just been hearing from people in the community about how much traffic there is on their little roads when a Airbnb or some kind of accommodation sets up at the end of a little island road. And I'm concerned about all the traffic and the wear and tear on the roads and things like that. To be better prepared for next year, when in the budget year, usually do we discuss the distribution of the taxes?
This year was presented at the committee, the whole presentation on January 20th.
Okay.
It was included in the presentation to council there. It's interesting that the concern is coming from operators of short-term rentals.
No, it's neighbors of
Neighbors of short-term rentals, that's what I mean. The issue that you're raising is not one that could be addressed through the distribution of the property tax rates. Those properties are still classified as residential properties. Again, it's BC assessment that controls the classification of a property. All of those properties, acknowledging that they are sometimes for periods of the year being operated for profit, for business, they're still classified as residential. They would still be subject to the same tax rate. So that's not a problem that you could address by changing the tax rates.
Thank you very much. That's my question.
Any further questions? Not seeing any. Can I have the recommendations put on the floor?
I'll move it, thank you. The Bowen Island Municipality Bylaw number 667, 2025, 5-year financial plan, 2025 to 2029, be reconsidered and finally adopted. That Bowen Island Municipality Bylaw number 678, 2025 annual tax rates bylaw is reconsidered and finally adopted.
Moved by Councilor Fast, seconded by Councilor Saunders. Any further discussion on this piece? Councilor Lee.
Just a comment, relating to our earlier discussion, I'm relieved that we haven't closed the door on funding through the approving this, which gives me comfort. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lake. I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that carries unanimously. So thank you for all of your work on that for the CFO. The budget time is particularly intense, and also thank you to council. I think having unanimous passing of the budget is an indication of some strong work and some strong discussions that we had around this table. Believe that we've set a budget that is consistent with our 5-year plans, that maintains a tax rate that's consistent with our 5-year plans. And, I have heard some concern in the community that the tax rate is high. It is still at 9.5%, which is absolutely true. And for folks that are interested in some of those reasons, I think the previous discussions that we had around this table and even last time at the budget table are really informative as to why that is. And I think what you've seen this council do is take a good hard look at operational expenses and shrink those while maintaining space for capital expenses. So what we've seen through this budget and the maintaining of this tax rate and not chasing a specific percentage or trying to drive it down by 2 or 3%, is that we have a few $100,000 of stable capital funding that's going to go into reserves that will really assist as we continue to do the work on asset management, on roads and waters and water and utilities, and put some of those hard goods into the ground and replace them and renew them in a way that I don't think has been really approached before. So I thank council for the work on this budget. I thank staff for the many long hours that went into it. And I look forward to seeing how this year plays out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now moving on to parcel taxes and utility user rate bylaws. We have the CFO joining us here.
Sorry.
Council Morris is watching YouTube.
No, I'm not, I was trying to find the utilities budget.
Catching up on the election results.
No, I wanted to compare the. Raise my question when I get.
That's okay. I'm just fine. Over to you, over to the CFO.
Thank you, Mayor, through the chair, to the rest of council. The second piece of completing the 5-year financial plan development process is updating, amending, and approving utility rates for each of the municipalities' 7 water systems and 1 sewer system. The utilities budget was first made available to the public on the website at the end of February. It was presented in a dedicated utilities committee of the whole meeting on March 3rd. The rates have been widely advertised through social media and in the undercurrent as well. And lastly, they were presented again to council in the council meeting at March 24th. So there has been several opportunities to discuss for members of the public to review and consider the utility rates as they are being recommended to council today. There is also a couple of parcel taxes that are being amended for some of the water systems that are included in this list. So that's another piece relating to the tax notice that is required to be approved before we can prepare those notices. I am recommending that council give 3 readings to these specific bylaws today. And I am recommending that they be presented for 4th reading and adoption in relatively quick succession. And that is in order to make sure that we are able to print our tax notices in advance of any potential postal strike labor disruption that may be occurring somewhere in the last week of May. So we do have that on our radar, and we want to make sure that we do have the ability to get our tax notices out in due time. So that is why there is a recommendation for council to give 4th reading and adoption to these utility rate bylaws in relative quick succession.
Council Morris.
Is there a different rate for commercial and residential in Copac?
No, there's not a different rate. There's just no.
So the letters we got complaining about the changing rates, in looking through the presentation from that council meeting we had, how it was all laid out there, so it's not a surprise.
No, it was posted, it's in the material that's been available public since the end of February. Okay.
Not seeing any hands up. Council Morris.
I move that the following bylaws be read in first, second, and third time. The Long Island Municipalities Signage Parcel Tax Rate Bylaw number 518/2020, Amendment Bylaw number 679/2025, the Long Island Municipality Code Bay Water System Local Service Area User Rates Bylaw number 680/2025, Long Municipality Eagle Cliff Water System User Rates Bylaw number 541/2021, Amendment Bylaw number 681/2025, Bowen Island Municipality West Side Water Systems User Rates. Bylaw number 682, 2025. Bowen Island Municipality Hood Point Water System User Rates bylaw number 542, 2021. Amendment bylaw number 683, 2025. Bowen Island Municipality Hood Point Water System Parcel Tax bylaw number 547, 2021. Amendment bylaw number 684, 2025. Bowen Island Municipality Tunstall Bay Water System Parcel Tax bylaw number 574, 2022. Amendment bylaw number 685, 2025. Bowen Island Municipality King Edward Bay Water System Local Service Area Parcel Tax bylaw number 686, 2025. Bowen Island Municipality Snug Cove Sewer System Local Service Area User Rates bylaw number 687, 2025.
Okay, moved by Councilor Morse. Seconded by Councilor Getty. Any further discussion?
Mayor, is it possible to make a statement from the floor?
It is not. Councilor Bass.
I just wanted to highlight in 12.18, our CFO's response to somebody's question about Cove Bay water rates. And I thought it was a really good response and laid out quite clearly some of the thinking that has gone into this, into each of these water rates and why the increases are needed. So thank you for that, for including it in here, because you didn't need to, but it's helpful. Thank you.
Councilor Ferguson.
This, when taken together, putting the increases that are going here into the water systems, those are property tax increase that has been going on year over year. I am starting to get a little concerned about also the affordability of actually living within the community. I know there's not much we can do about that around this table at this time with the water or the sewer at this point, but I don't know. I don't know what kind of discussion we need to have, but the costs continue to go up quite a bit when you take everything together, and I'm just starting to get concerned. So.
Councilor Ferguson. Councilor Getty.
I'm not opposed in any way to these, the passing of these bylaws, but I would like us to take a closer look in terms of some of the comparison fees charged and the differences between the 15% of the households that are using less than 25 cubic meters and those over, say, 150 cubic meters. There's virtually no difference. It's, goes from 25 cubic meters is $300 in 2024 up to $406. So I think that the heavy users, even with the differences in numbers of people in the family, that needs to be more critically examined. So I don't know if that's a function of council or the user group or how those rates get figured out, but that seems to me not encouraging conservation.
Which water system?
It's on page 2 of 4 of the report. Oh, sorry, this is the response from our CFO to Mr. Huntingford in his letter. It was in our correspondence, 12.18. And it was on her. What's the page of that letter?
Cove Bay.
Yes, to the CFO.
Thank you, through the mayor to Councilor Getty. For the over 150 cubic meters, the range of consumption volumes is so wide. Because of course it includes all of the very large users such as the 2 restaurants, more, but significant 2 restaurants. The school, the 510 truck road, the building, the multifamily properties. So they're not just sitting at 150, they're just so much higher that as a group, because they're so diverse, I can't really group them together and give you an average. So there's no volumetric consumption provided in this chart for any of those users over 150. It's really looking at what a typical residential user would incur. And by far the vast majority, almost 90% of them are under 150 cubic meters. So that's capturing a really good, it's a good reflection of what an average residential user would incur. Again, because of the variability and the very large consumption for those unique properties in Cove Bay, it's really hard to create a snapshot to explain what the impact would be.
Yes, Councillor Gill.
The numbers aren't there for the very large users, so I don't know what that is.
Right.
So, you know, that may be off the charts, but between the 25 and the 150 cubic meters, that's 6 times the volume.
Yeah.
And it's $100 different.
Yeah.
From the base rate of 300. So
Yeah.
that's something that I think needs to be. And I don't know if it's our purview, is the other question. So however it gets examined, it seems to me that's problematic in some ways. Maybe not entirely, but future reference.
Councillor Fast, followed by Councillor Wade.
I believe we do look at this at some point, probably to approve it, but when does this conservation pricing get addressed by council, or does it?
This is the bylaw here for the conservation pricing. It is.
Yeah, but I mean, did we just discuss this earlier, or is it just coming to us now?
No, it was presented to you at the committee of the whole. on Wednesday.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Wade.
Through the chair, maybe I've got this wrong, but aren't we talking about the parcel tax rate here? And we also have the user fees?
Yeah.
Which are significantly different for people, the high use.
There's in Cove Bay is what you're talking about. So there is now a 3-tier structure. So the first tier is charged at 50 cents per cubic meter. Cubic meter is a lot of water. It's 220 gallons, which for a typical user is almost 3 days worth of water. So 50 cents per cubic meter for the first tier. Second tier is $1, and third tier is up to $1.19.
And from what I understood from what you said earlier, most of the people that are paying the $1.90 are all the restaurants and the
Correct.
school and not residential use.
There aren't very many. There's a few more in the summer, of course. But it is at the same time, it's a tool to conserve water. We've got a water treatment plant that is operating at 50% capacity at the moment, and there is a possibility in the summer that water supply will need to be reduced in order to make sure that we can continue to provide. So it does need to have a bit of a punitive component to it. It does need to be higher.
Not seeing any further comments or questions, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Carries. We'll let the gallery know that there is a portion of the meeting at the end for question and answer, should you wish to ask a question. Get it to something portion of each. And the CFO. Moving on to section 8, staff report, 8.1, policy process for disposal of municipal land for affordable housing. Planning development with this here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a short presentation on this topic, but I wanted to chat with you if you wanted me to proceed or proceed straight.
I think this is significant enough that a presentation.
I have before you a draft policy for a process for disposal of municipal land for affordable housing. This is an item that came from our Housing Accelerator Fund Action Plan with the province, which is, with the federal government and CMHC, which provides us funding. At the time, we wrote this 1.6 and now it's up to $1.8 million based on completion of our housing action plan. So this is number 6, which was to establish a process council can follow in making a decision to dispose of land. And just emphasizing this isn't about any one decision, but it's about setting that bigger framework for council. And so the draft policy that is before you outlines 7 steps that would take place in a decision to dispose of municipal land. Then I wanted to go through in more detail some of the amendments that came about from my discussion with the Advisory Planning Commission. And this earlier council discussion when we came before you. So one is just a blanket change of making sure we change any reference to sale to the reference to disposal. The APC wanted to make sure we removing reference to surplus lands, so saying it may be surplus for municipal purposes, but have community needs. 3, they wanted to ensure that any request for land be accompanied by an explanation of how this land disposal would support community goals. Say I would like land, say that's just going to benefit Bow Island as well. For the APC, we had a good discussion about what should be included in the background report for council, so we can try to decide on what to do with land, what you should have. So some of the topics included servicing, what amenities need to be provided, and then the debt and property tax implication. So debt specifically thinking like if we borrow money to buy this land, is there debt outstanding result of it, and property tax implications, this adding to our tax base. The policy before had just talked about, community conservation may be appropriate. The agency wanted more language about some guidance about like, well, when is it appropriate? And then 0.6 including guidance about when to dispose of land as a sale or a lease. You don't have the, and then the recommendation is for council to adopt this policy, this meeting for the process for disposal of municipal land. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Councilor Morris, followed by Councilor Lake.
Councilor Martin, are you going to run through the 3 changes that need to be made to the policy? Because what I've got in my package is well, like 0.6, for example. There's 2 A's and it should be A and B. And the second under what is now should be B. It trails off and doesn't have the rest of the statement in it.
Yeah, if you can, through the share, so just that 6 point. So when deciding what to dispose of land, the versions in your agenda package just ends at this method is suitable when the municipality wants to retain long-term ownership, but it's supposed to end, but allows for a use of land that supports community goals. That was the piece that's missing. And then, yes, just the I think just ensuring that you said some of the numbering was out, and so we make sure that administrative detail is fixed.
Okay, and one more thing, which it's not just, we're not just doing it out disposable of housing for affordable housing. So people are going to be confused if they read the policy and they'll think it only applies to affordable housing. So I think the title should have the words "and" underneath this added to it. So that it's clear that we're talking about a policy that's going to apply to any disposal of land by the municipality, not just land for affordable housing. If this is a very broad policy when you read through it.
Through the chair. Yes, and I think we've talked like the APC too about just calling it process for disposal of municipal land. And then just the sensitivity being that the CMHC is expected to include affordable housing, and so either we can ask them to read into it or in the title to say, yes, we're fulfilling what you've asked us to do and what we're committed to. But so the amended title, process for disposal of municipal land for affordable housing and other purposes.
I'd like to see that, so it's clear for anybody looking at the list of policies that it applies to every kind of land.
Thank you. I had the same question. I didn't notice that there's 2 6 A's, as Councillor Morse pointed out, but You mentioned it goes but allow, and in my package here, there's nothing after but allow. So are you saying that it already includes the words for use of the land that supports community goals?
I think
Or
that's-
would we have to amend it?
If I guess the council just approves it as amended at the April 28th meeting, that would be fair. That's the language that I had put in when we first alerted that, yeah, that stuff was
Okay.
missing, we're reinserting that.
Okay, as amended, thank you. And then the second part is I don't support the idea of having a policy that looks like an invitation to people to apply to the municipality for land for all kinds of uses. So I like having the title nice and clear so that it doesn't set up any barriers for use for affordable housing and our grant that we're relying on. So I hope you don't make that change. And is that a change that you've already made? If I say as amended, if we move something that's as amended, does the title change?
I guess I look for through the chair for clarity for council. I mean, I guess I would say in a sense, whether you have a policy or not, the invitation is there for people to say, oh, I would like to buy some municipal land for whatever reason. I can see that there's a parcel there. I'd like to buy it or something, maybe write a letter to council, like a closed meeting, I think, to council. Whether or not we have a policy, the policy is more there to say, okay, if we get that request, what does council do with it? What helps you decide? And that's the intent of the policy.
Okay, because I know we've done it for the health center, that kind of, as long as it's for community use and that part is in there, down there, that's okay with me. Thank you.
So just to be clear, we're adding words and other uses to the title, because otherwise people will think it's just for affordable housing and then be really surprised when somebody says, here's a policy you've got to look at when they ask.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that we need to have affordable housing in there because with the half grant, it's this is needed for the half grant.
What we're being asked to look at this point is a policy with respect to disposal of municipal land, and it's to comply with the requirements of the federal government for this HAF grant. I think that's one thing. I think that just to casually slip in that it's for other things. I haven't thought that through enough, and I think the concessions that we're making in terms of reducing parking standards or waiving public hearings or different things that have specific links to affordable housing that we may be willing to forego is quite different from somebody coming along and wanting to build an amenity that somehow or other appeals for public land, but it's going to require more parking. Or it's going to, if not more parking, then some other amenity to bring in more buses or some other form. So I've read this and I've thought of it in the context of affordable housing, but to suggest that we have already agreed to change and amend the title so that it applies to something more, I disagree with that. And I haven't had there hasn't been a motion to amend, and we haven't had a discussion about that. And what's been presented is with respect to affordable housing, and I'm in agreement with that. But I think we need more time of discussion if we're going to open it up to any other and all other.
I saw a little wave there. Is that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say to Council Getty, like the policy objective of the policy was to provide a clear process to guide council when deciding to dispose of municipal land. And that hasn't changed, and that's the main policy objective that came before council.
I'm gonna go to first time speakers, Councilor Jurgensen.
I just want to offer that much as I understand Councilor Getty did, I saw the title and even when this came before APC, I still read this as being primarily about affordable housing and read it with that lens in mind. And is there any harm in deferring this to the next council meeting to be able to process this change in perspective for people?
Council's certainly able to exercise that ability.
I've raised this because it's very clear in reading the policy that it applies to any land for, it's right in there. Land for other, community goals. Um, Council may impose conditions such as specific uses to ensure the sale, disposal, and line community goals. It's clearly covering, and that's been there from day one, more than just land for affordable housing. But if you want to leave the title as affordable housing, so we can get it passed, so we can finish our half grant qualifications. Okay, and I'll bring up a formal resolution at a later date. But it's clearly covering more than just land for affordable housing. You don't want it to cover land for other just affordable housing, then the whole policy has to be rewritten.
Okay. Yeah, from just in my own read of the policy, I don't have any issue with it covering municipal land. Generally, I think even a policy like this would have been helpful when we were talking about things like the fire hall or other disposition of lands that came up previously. It would have given us some sort of framework to work through. But I know that there was, some stops and starts on that one. So I'll look to council for their will, whether they wish to adopt policy as amended. Absolutely.
To your example, if we had this in there when we were going for the land for the fire hall, it would have had to have had affordable housing on top of it, which would have been a great idea.
Okay, so I will, noticing that questions and discussions have been done, we'll look to council for this condition. Councillor Fast.
I would like to know what exactly we're voting on. So I would like to propose an amendment that in section that council requests staff to adjust the lettering in section 6, because there's 2 A's, and to insert the words for a use of land that supports community goals at the end of the sentence in 6B11, after but allows. Just so we're clear. Thank you. So that's my amendment.
Okay, and I would also suggest and then report back to. That's something that we're just gonna do.
I would just do it here.
We should change it here because it's very simple. It's just fixing typos.
Okay, by Councillor Fast, second by Councillor Lake, any discussion on motion to amend the policy, the language of the policy? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the policy language has been amended, however, it hasn't been adopted, so we'll look again to council for this position. Councillor Fast.
Then I would move no further amendments, and that that council adopt policy 2501, process for disposal of municipal land for affordable housing.
Has it been?
No,
It's already been
we just amended it. Yes, as amended.
See,
Right?
the planner looking at us through the chair, it's looking at the court officer, if you've moved it by amendment. As amended.
The way I have it recorded here is that there was a motion and adoption direction to staff to amend policy. And now further, this would be a resolution to adopt the policy as amended.
Okay, but just if you can make it clear that it's just the one amendment, that's all she's doing. I'm speaking to the corporate office.
So the first motion was directing staff to adjust the letter to section 6 and insert the words for use of land that supports community goals at the end of the sentence. 6B.
Thank you. That's the only amendment. And then so then that council adopt policy 2501, process for disposal of municipal land for affordable housing as amended.
By Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Jurgensen. Any further discussion or debate? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed, raise your hand and say nay. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
Moving on to correspondence, we have 10.1 Regina Farah regarding invasive plants dated April 7th, 2025.
Oh, before that. Okay, Carl probably knows. Just relates to this.
Maybe I'll look to our manager of Parks and Environment for any comment on this invasive species letter. Generally, or perhaps not. So we have a letter in front of us. I'll look to council first then for what you would like to do with it. Not so fast.
Thank you. I was interested to see this amendment, or see this letter, because invasive plants are a big problem in biodiversity conservation on all the islands, and including Bowen. And I wonder if the recommendation here about that there be best practices be referred to or be followed, is that in the what's it called? Our policy or our bylaw about alteration of sites, site alteration bylaw? Do you know if it says anything about invasive plants?
Through the chair, I am not sure that would be in the question for the manager of planning.
Yeah, okay, I missed them. All right, thank you. I'll move to look it up. How about if I move to receive it and look it up and follow up with staff later, something?
Sure, we can move to proceed.
We had a late item. Do with. From the resident.
12.27.
Yeah, I thought somebody pulled that. Donated. I was just wondering if you could refer. Correspondence at 10.1 and the correspondence at 12.27 to the. Parks and Environment.
Yep, that's another option until they
Oh,
hear.
yeah. So I will move that we refer 10.1 and 12.27 to the manager of Parks and Environment.
Moved by Council Morris. Second by Council Getty. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that carries unanimously. That has been approved. 10.2, Chair Mike Hurley, Metro Vancouver Board of Directors regarding Metro 2050 Type 2 proposed amendment. City of Delta, dated April 17th, 2025. Any comment on this from council? Councilor Getty?
I don't know why, but I spent a huge amount of time going through this, and it's some 400 pages of minute detail of every step that they've taken all the way up to this recommendation. And it's pretty interesting, and I started to react in terms of where from the position of we're getting all of these people coming over from the mainland that don't have green space, that are looking for pristine, clean, wonderfully smelling, beautifully battling brooks and all the rest of it that attracts and our mandate to preserve and protect. And then they have some land that has been destroyed and surrounded that was originally part of the ALR. Is probably no longer usable as agricultural land, but it's an area, tiny little, well, it's actually quite large for our standards, but it's surrounded by pretty significant dense housing. And the map of their final development has a circle on it that looks like something that we used with John Reed's application to protect one tree on the parking lot at Grafton, and that's their community green space within this development of townhouses. So I don't know if this council wants to take a position, but they basically are somehow or other that space has been degraded to the point where it's no longer usable for agriculture. Some of the comments that they got from all of the local neighbors were very, very interesting. And the comments from the staff were that there's the Delta 1985 OCP has labeled this as recreational area. but there's no green space that's left on the actual site except for that one circle that may or may not be a tree. They're talking about taking out, removing all of the trees and replanting them later, but there's no guarantee that they in fact will do that. And the recreational plan doesn't describe, in this development, doesn't describe any amenities other than a cafe, a restaurant, and a gym nearby. From our perspective, I would think that this is something that would never fly, and I don't think this would ever fly in this community. They talk about GHG gases with very limited transit, a guarantee of extra cars. It's a very long commute for everybody that lives in that area. The numbers that they've got are very high. And there's future plans for an overhead pedestrian walkway to get to the shopping on the other side of a busy road, and what they call a challenging multi-use path. It's without interfering with their need to develop the last remaining little bit of green that they've got in this area. I don't think it does us any good. It maximizes the problems and the frustrations that residents have in terms of wanting to come to, and puts pressure on us in terms of people that are going to want to come to our area as long as we're able to keep it green. And they're not making any effort to keep any park green space in there. I think that's I think it's backwards. And I think that they I don't know that it would make any difference. I have no idea if it's the political difference in terms of us speaking up, but I think that this is not something that we could or should be supporting.
Thank you, Councilor Gideon. From the chair, I have no appetite to respond to this. My recommendation to council would just be to receive it for a couple of reasons. First, it's an amendment to Metro 2050, which Plymouth Island is not a participant of. We're not we get consulted on these pieces, but we don't. The regional growth strategy doesn't apply to us, and it's given that the Agricultural Land Commission said that they're fine with it. I would have great difficulty in telling Delta, City of Delta, how to run their municipality, as I certainly wouldn't appreciate the City of Delta telling us how to run and plan ours. So my recommendation would just be to make a motion to receive.
If you've made that motion.
So Councilor Saunders, let's say you made the motion.
Motion to receive.
Okay, seconded by Councilor Wake. Any further discussion? Councilor Fast.
Thank you. Thanks for reading it carefully, because I didn't get into that kind of deep reading of it. But it's interesting to me that if there's a way that Bowen can somehow encourage other lower mainland municipalities to preserve their green space too, because we're getting overwhelmed, we should look for an opportunity. I'm not sure that this is the one, because the Agricultural Land Commission has already approved it in principle. And there's another aspect to this too, but I can't think of it just now. So I'm happy to support the motion to receive.
Just a curiosity,
Yes.
because they referred it to us, do we have any duty to respond? I mean, to send a letter to say we have no comment?
No, we don't. It's the letter invites submissions if council wishes to.
Just first, I think to Councilor Fast's point, the places for advocacy are when Metro 2050 gets discussed. I think we have a strong position previous time in regards to sending a letter against the expansion of the urban containment boundary, for example. I was in support of that one. There's there's going to be discussions likely coming up on climate 2050 and the underlying roadmaps. I think that's a strong position to advocate from. But I don't want to put a B in Delta's block at this point because I'm not sure how much good it would do. Councilor.
I tend to agree with you, Mayor Leonard. Just to do that would kind of be like poking the bear. And I don't think they're looking to pull it out for advice. So they're looking for approval, and if we just receive and don't respond, then that's a good enough message.
Okay, so I'll call the question in. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Any opposed, raise your hand, say nay. So that carries with Councilor Getty in opposition. And we are on to updates on Metro Vancouver business. The agenda for Metro Vancouver is attached there. The board meeting just happened last Friday. There was some discussion on regional housing needs reports. There was conversations around, again, province's responsibilities. That was at the Metro Vancouver table, what I can see. Other interesting pieces there around Invest Vancouver. There was an announcement made by Surrey for anybody who's interested in Invest Vancouver. Invest Vancouver is a Metro Vancouver entity that promotes investment in Metro Vancouver's region. Surrey said that they are no longer going to pay their 40% portion of that. So the future of Metro of Invest Vancouver is up in the air. That is it on Metro Vancouver. 11.2 update the council on regional transportation meeting. So there is a news release attached here that the public engagement begins on TransLink's 2025 investment plan. This was parsing what I can and can't say from open and closed meetings. So there was a very down to the wire discussion on TransLink getting required funding from the province and reaching a funding agreement with the province. The result is that there's an investment plan that maintains and increases some service. It will also come with an increase in property taxes as well, which was discussed robustly by the smaller municipalities, because we're sort of put in the position of needing to go along with it or else basically lose our service, and there's not better service coming, which is unfortunate, but there will be design continuing on things like bus rapid transit corridors, increases in handy dart trips, and adding West Coast Express train cars. So that's sort of exciting for the region, but nothing really involved. Any questions? And then we'll look to our trustees for their update. Councilor Fast.
Just a quick one. At the Howe Sound Community Forum, which was on Friday, most of us attended. Were able to attend. I mean, I know people were on the road and getting text messages from us. Apologies for that, Councillor Saunders. And I just wanted to mention Islands Trust contributes about $4,000 to the Howe Sound Community Forum in order to help it meet its room rentals fees and things like that. And so they were acknowledged there at the end of the program. And it was a good session. Regarding another suggestion that was received from another municipal councillor about making sure that Islands Trust meetings were on the calendar. Meetings, there's many more meetings now, and they move around because Trust Programs Committee has taken on the role of providing Trust Council with recommendations about updating the trust policy statement. And because the timing doesn't work for some people and all this kind of thing, as well as the governance meetings have been added. There are many more meetings now happening at Islands Trust, and you can't put them all on the calendar at the beginning of the year, as was suggested. Thank you for the advice.
Trustee Getty?
A reminder that the executive committee is coming for a visit this Wednesday, and so that we're going to have a couple of people here in person and some others on Zoom. And there's an agenda that's been set up in terms of discussion topics. We also have a program committee that's now dealing with the policy revision. Is tomorrow statement, and that is it was taken out of a committee of the whole process because we weren't getting a quorum and we were working through some issues and it just wasn't generating enough interest in terms of getting the work done. So it's gone to programs and they're working through it and being very helpful about it. There's another committee of the whole meeting coming up on the governance review that was tabled back in March of 22 that has never been reviewed by this council. So there's been some requests that happen. So the governance committee has been busy preparing. There's a lot of stuff for people to read and they've just been asked to do the background reading in preparation. And hopefully there'll be reasonably good attendance. At council, they say that they want to have a vigorous discussion and whether or not people will show up for committee of the whole format to actually hold that discussion will be pivotal in terms of us deciding, I think, how to use the committee of the whole structure. There's also, they've scheduled for May the 8th, a budget open house, and they want to have access to the community to discuss and ask questions and deal with all the items that are in the budget. And I noticed I was looking through the executive committee meeting to see what they recommended about the governance review. There was also a referral there from the province and our naming exercise to change the names of the Pebbly Beach at Cape Roger Curtis and Crayola Beach in Bluewater. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the First Nations names, but that has been referred to the executive for comment by the province. So that's moving its way through the process as well. So I'm not sure what the results were. I can't imagine there to be any problems from the executive committee. So I would assume that they'll get positive feedback to the province and we'll get that back shortly.
Trustee Fastel.
One more thing I meant to report as the chair of the financial planning committee is that we're changing the way budget consultation is happening at the trust, so it'll come out about 4 to 6 months earlier, so that we actually can, because trust council only meets 4 times a year, it's been very difficult to take public input into account when it's actually at the decision time. So we're moving it up, so that's why the survey and any other information will be coming in May. Around the same time as the, anyway, so I've had a look at the survey draft and made sure that the Bowen parts made sense and that kind of thing. So that'll come, interestingly, that'll come around the same time as the public input for Bowen's official community plan. So there'll be lots of public input invited in May. Thank you.
Any questions for the trustees? Councilor Wick?
To Councilor Getty, do we know who the 2 Islands Trust reps who will be here in person? Do you know which ones?
I think it's the chair, Laura Blackbrook, and the one of the executive directors, Toby Elliott, and I believe staff Claire Frater, who's responsible for the trust policy statement. Working.
The new CEO is not coming in person.
Oh, yes.
CAO, I believe.
Or CEO, whatever.
Yeah, he may be coming.
I believe so.
Toby Elliott is from Gabriola.
Right.
For corporate officers, but I'm guessing.
Yes.
She knows.
Mayor Leonard, will you be here to chair that meeting?
I will be here, Chair. Okay, not seeing any further questions for the trustees. We can move down to question period. So question period is an opportunity for members of the public to request clarification or ask a follow-up question relating to an item discussed at the meeting. Anybody in the gallery or online that is here to ask questions? No one online. We did a sufficient job and our communication and our debate here today, that's fantastic. That I will look for a motion to adjourn, moved by Council Getty, seconded by Council Lake. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned for 10-ish minutes.